Hello everyone, Sam here, and today is a special video because I am going to be talking about the UCF Summer Reading Challenge. This is something that I'm doing for myself. This really isn't a reading event that anybody else is doing on BookTube that I'm aware of, and this isn't really something that I'm necessarily inviting other people to do. You can do it if you want, but this isn't like Mummy May where I was inviting others to join in. This is more of a personal reading challenge that I'm doing because it's something involved with the University of Central Florida, which I am closely affiliated with. To be more specific, I am a University of Central Florida alumni. This is a hat, a UCF hat that I won at an event actually in Daytona Beach at the Jackie Robinson ballpark. I won this hat during a drawing, and I've kept it ever since. But I went to the University of Central Florida for 4 years. 2 of those years were to earn my bachelor's in English, and the 2 other years were to get my master's in creative writing fiction. And I had a pretty good time there. There were the usual ups and downs of college life, but there were significantly more ups than downs, in my opinion. So I've always been very fond of UCF. And I've tried to participate in a lot of events that they host, whether it's alumni events or just general events. And one of the groups they have is the Alumni Book Club. That's where different UCF alumni can gather to do a book club reading. And they do it every month. Right now they're doing a book called Heartwood, I believe. And that's going to be interesting. But during the summer, they have a summer reading challenge for alumni, both for adults and for kids. I'm doing the adult one, obviously. And they do a summer reading challenge that occurs every summer. They also do one in the winter, but the summer one is their longer one because it goes for almost 2 months. And it's always done in the form of a bingo card. The idea is that they have this bingo card. It's hard to see on my camera, but the whole idea is that they have a different description of a book. Whatever book you decide to do for each space, and you fill it out like a bingo card. It can be up, to the side, diagonal, whatever order you do it in. And this year it's running for a little under 2 months, starting today, June 13th, going to August 9th. The whole idea is that it goes during the summer vacation period for both college students and kids. And I'm participating this year because I actually have never completed the challenge, even though I've signed up for it about 3 or 4 different times. Because I've always gotten sidetracked with other work or other things going on in my life. I actually still have my previous year's bingo card with me. This one is not Nitro, the UCF mascot. It's the Citronaut. Because before UCF was the University of Central Florida, it was Florida Technical University. And their mascot was the Citronaut. He was a orange who looks like a astronaut. Because UCF does a lot of things with Cape Canaveral. So that was the theme for last year. But this year it's back to Nitro. Nitro is the mascot because UCF is the Golden Knights. So that's my main reason I want to do this year. And since I've started BookTube, I thought I would share the books I'm going to try and read over the summer. And I'm hoping that this will be my first year to finish it. Because like I said, I only need 5 books. You only need 5 books in a row to make a bingo. But if there's anything you guys should have grasped by now, is that I'm a bit of an overachiever. I always want to do a little bit more than what a challenge or reading event requires. So I'm going to work to read not just 5, but most of the books on the bingo that I've written, which adds up to 25. A fair amount, make no mistake. And I don't expect to read all 25 of them, but I want to try and read most of them. And I will get a bingo, no sweat. But getting a full 25 card, that'll be a little more of a challenge. So, and one reason I'm also doing is that a lot of the stories I had on for the previous year, for the Citronaut Challenge, I never got to. So a lot of them pop up again on this year's Summer Reading Challenge. So this is also kind of an excuse to get to those books that I've had on the back burner for a while. And so the rest of this video is going to be me going through each of the spaces on the challenge and saying which book I'm going to be doing, and explaining why I'm my justifications for reading that book and how it qualifies for those spaces. So that's going to be this video. Hopefully you guys find it interesting and maybe discover a few books you might want to check out based on how I describe them. So yeah, that's the plan. So we'll start with the first row. We'll do it across just to make things easier. It's rows of it's 5 rows of 5, like a typical bingo card. And the first book I have is an interesting one. The space is Reader's Choice, which means any book I want to do. There's no qualifications or restrictions. And I decided to do David Vining's Colonial Nightmare. This is the one I have. It's a digital. It's on my Amazon tablet. And it's hard to see, but this is the famous portrait of a young George Washington. And the story of Colonial Nightmare is essentially George Washington goes on a mission for the governor of Virginia. This is during the British colonial era, and it's right before the French and Indian War. And the premise of it is that George Washington goes on this mission with a few other men to do this diplomatic mission to make sure war does not break out between the French and the Native Americans that are in the Ohio River Valley. And the whole premise of Colonial Nightmare is that George Washington and this group experienced some sort of horror-related creature or being. And the premise of the story is that this is sort of a long-lost thing that Washington never brought up to everybody, but this is what really happened during this mission that starts to go wrong when they learn about this horror lurking in the Ohio River Valley. So, main reason I wanted to read this is that this has been on my to-be-read list for a while, and I just really kind of like the idea of taking a famous founding father and putting him in a horror scenario. Like, that's kind of an interesting concept to me. And so I figured I would check that out and see how this work executes that idea. So the second space I have is titled Beach Read. And a beach read, for those that don't know, is essentially a book that's sort of light reading. You know, not terribly strenuous. There's not a whole lot of action, not a whole lot of strife. It's a relaxed read that you could read on the beach. And this was kind of a tough one to figure out because I don't go for that kind of reading much, but I did find one that was in my Kindle that sounds like it would fit the bill. And this one is titled Doors in Onteora County Romance by Francis Poretto. And this is supposedly about a couple in Maine, and the whole premise of the story is that the man has been living there for several years, and the woman who becomes his wife comes over to Maine because she was fleeing some bad guys from New York. And the whole premise of the story is that the bad guys have found their way up to Maine, and the husband is trying, and wife have to kind of work together to find a way to get rid of these bad guys. And so I chose this one because the story kind of seemed more low-key than what a lot of what I read generally is, and this one seemed to emphasize the romance more than the actual like conflict of the bad guys. So I was like, okay, this might qualify as a beach read. In fact, I may actually read this at the actual beach, because I might go to the actual beach sometime, so it could be a literal beach read. So that'll be interesting. The third space is titled bestseller, essentially meaning the book has to be a bestseller, either a long time ago or now. And I figured I would do one that was now. And I talked about this book earlier this week in my June haul video, that one I did about the bunch of books that I got earlier this week. And one I chose for bestseller is Suicidal Empathy by Gad Saad. Interesting name. And the whole premise of Suicidal Empathy is that it is a political book. It's a political critique of what Saad calls like the culture of empathy. And essentially he's arguing that empathy has kind of been overemphasized in today's society, and that it isn't really being used productively, and has almost become more destructive in its utilization. And I got this book because my father had mentioned it a while ago, and out of curiosity I was looking up on Amazon, and on Amazon it was listed as a bestseller. So yeah, so this qualifies in that sense, so that's an excuse to read it. This will probably be on my political book discussion show. I'm going to be starting that recently. The first episode of that is going to be coming up within the next week or two. I've almost finished the script for that one. So this will probably pop up on that whenever I finish reading this. Hold on a second. The chair is on a wire. Can't have that. There we go. The wonders of technology. All right, the fourth space is new release, a book that was released recently. And I decided to get one that I was a little iffy about, but decided just out of curiosity. This was released earlier this month, and it's titled Marion, a Novel by Leah Rowan. I've mentioned this in previous videos, but this is a book that's supposed to be an alternative take on the movie Psycho. and it seems to be leaning more into the movie than the original book by Robert Bloch. And the whole premise of this is that Marion Crane, who is the initial heroine of the movie Psycho, slight spoiler in case you haven't seen a over 50-year-old movie, but she dies pretty early into the movie. But this posits an alternative take on the story where she actually survives her attack from Mother. I won't spoil who Mother is, but she fights off Mother, and essentially she kills Mother instead of Mother killing her. And this, because of that, Marion, who is already in trouble for stealing money, is now a killer. And this book sort of examines what happens what would happen if she kind of took over the mother role and started taking care of people. So, like I said, I mentioned in my Pandy Pack video that I did like a month or two ago that I wasn't very enthused with the idea because I just don't like the idea of people remixing old movies with ideas that are just not all that interesting, or they're trying to change the movie for some weird reason. I wasn't initially very enthused with this, but partially because this was listed as a new release, I was like, okay, it qualifies for the space, and also because it gave me an excuse to watch Psycho again, which is a good thriller film. And so I'm going to give this a chance. I get the suspicion I won't enjoy it, but I'll see if it's any good, if it does the scenario in an interesting way. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes. The fifth space is another reader's choice. I could choose whichever one I wanted. And this one I'm going to do is Thor by Wayne Smith. And Thor is the story of a German shepherd named Thor who lives with his family of, the typical nuclear family, a mother, a wife, a mother, a father, and some kids. And the German shepherd, Thor, notices that this visiting uncle who comes to visit the family is a little strange. And it turns out the uncle is a werewolf. And the whole premise of the story is that Thor is the only one who knows the uncle's a werewolf, and he's trying to find ways to protect his family when the uncle turns into a werewolf. I learned about this story because if you've ever seen the YouTuber Cecil, who does Good Bad Flicks, he talked about the movie Bad Moon once, and I learned that it was based off this novel. And I kind of wanted to read the book to know the background of the film. And I've mentioned this a long time ago, but I'm actually a huge fan of werewolf fiction. And I think this story will actually be the first episode of the werewolf series I was going to do on this channel. So, yeah, good excuse to read this. Alright, so we're now on the second row of the bingo. And the second row, the first space says, picked for the cover. You had to pick a book that where the cover really grabbed onto you. And this one is pretty easy. This was, I decided to choose for this one, Silk Unspun by D.S. Blake. This is a story about a young man who is a bailiff. But not in the bailiff you think of today. He's a space bailiff. Because this is the far future. And one of the ideas is that mankind has spread to the stars so much, and there's tons of forms of alien life, but there's so many forms of alien life that it's become kind of a pain for Earth to establish contact. So they basically hire out these organizations to send out representatives to represent Earth, and as well as the corporations they work for. And the whole premise is that this young man becomes a bailiff and gets sent off to this world that's filled with spider people. They're essentially people who are spiders. Like, I'm not sure how to elaborate on that. And he gets sucked into the political intrigues of these local spider people. And he has to figure out how to navigate this weird situation to not only find a way to exploit them for his company's benefit, but also not get eaten by the spider people. Because if you know anything about spiders, they have a very they have a taste for meat. So that's sort of the scenario for this. And I picked this for the cover because I found this cover pretty eye-catching when I first saw it. It's hard to see on my camera, but the whole idea is that the main character is this guy. He's got like the gun from Blade Runner. He's walking all cool with that. Then you got this woman who I initially thought was riding a spider, which she might be, but I think it maybe her top half is human, the bottom half is this spider. I don't know. I haven't read it. But yeah, it was like, oh, okay, that's kind of a interesting cover. So yeah, this will be one that I'll like. And the Spider Woman kind of reminded me of that character. I think her name was Rhaenyra from the anime Monster Musume. There was a Spider Woman there who was very cute despite her somewhat sinister personality. But yeah, that's the one I've chosen. The second space is mystery/thriller. And the one I chose for this one is The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. I don't have a copy of that. I'm going to get that from the library. And that story is about this daughter of a wealthy family who has this summer camp on their property. And she decides to participate in the summer camp one year, and she disappears. And this is concerning, not just because she disappeared, but because she had an older brother who disappeared like 10, 15 years earlier under the exact same circumstances. So the whole idea of the story is people trying to not only find her, but figure out, well, what's going on? How does this connect to that previous disappearance? So I'm mostly choosing that one because that was one that the UCF Alumni Club read last year. But I just couldn't get around to finishing it, so this is an excuse to finish it. The third space is Blind Date with a Book. Essentially going with a book that you don't know too much about and just sort of choose out of like a dartboard. And the one I chose is titled Back to the Moon by Homer H. Hickam Jr. And premise of this story is that a man hijacks the space shuttle to go to the moon to get some sort of mysterious object, only to learn he's accidentally dragged a female daredevil who snuck onto the space shuttle, and they're also being chased by the United States government, who does not want them getting this object for some reason. I chose this one because I'd never heard of it before, and admittedly, someone did recommend this to me in one of my pulp discussion groups. They spoke very positively of this book, but the only thing I knew about it was that Homer Hickam Jr. was the author of October Sky, which, aside from the fact that October Sky has a story focused on space, Back to the Moon sounds like a very radical radically different take on space travel than that story was. So, yeah, I was definitely curious about this one. The next space is from your to be read. Uh, I have a long to be read because, in case you can't see, there are lots of books piled behind me. So this was this was an one where yeah I could pick it blindly and it would work. But excuse me, I decided I was going to pick one that had really been eating me for a while. That I really wanted to read. That one is Dracula by Bram Stoker. I don't think I need to explain what this one is. It's the Transylvanian Count escaping to England to start a reign of terror. Yeah, I don't need to explain what Dracula is. Everybody knows what Dracula is. Even you, yes, you, who have never heard of Dracula, you know what Dracula is about. So, this has been on my to be read list for way too long. And I also wanted to read it because I was reading Bram Stoker's other horror novel, The Jewel of the Seven Stars, that sort of involves a mummy. So I figured, well, might as well check this out too while I'm checking out that Bram Stoker story as well. The fifth space is to learn something. You have to read something in order to learn something. And I decided, okay, we're going to learn something about history, because that is a legitimate learning field. So I decided what I was going to do is Days of Rage, America's Radical Underground, the FBI, and the Forgotten Age of Revolutionary Violence, by Brian Burrow. This is a story that's about the rash of bombings in the 1970s from homegrown left-wing extremist groups in the United States. Groups like the Weather Underground, the Symbionese Liberation Army, the FALN, groups like that, and showing what the FBI did to catch a lot of these groups. I'm getting this mostly because a lot of people have recommended me this book based on what they talk about in regards to domestic unrest here in the United States. And kind of a morose thing to be obsessed about, but I've actually had an interest in domestic terrorism since high school and college. Not interested in doing it, let me emphasize, but sort of interested in what sort of drives people to do those things, and what sort of mindset people are in when they do that sort of stuff. Because one of the stories I wrote in college was all about somebody interviewing a domestic terrorist. So, yeah, this has just kind of been one of those things I'm like, oh yeah, this seems like something interesting. And, yeah, I just wanted to check it out, so. We are now on row 3. And row 3, the first space is book in a series. So you got to choose a book that is a book in a series. It can be the first one, it can be the 7th one, but it has to be a series. And I said, well, I'm trying to pick up on my Edgar Rice Burroughs reading, so I figured I would read the first installment of the Pellucidar series, At the Earth's Core. This is the Ace edition that I have. It's hard to see, but it's a Frank Frazetta cover. So definitely wanted to get an edition with that cover. And yeah. For those that don't know, at the Earth's core, it deals with these two guys who managed to build a boring device, a device that bores into the Earth. And they expect, oh, we'll get like some geological samples and whatnot. But they go deep enough that they actually end up in the center of the Earth, where it's not rock, it's a whole open world and society. And they find the land of Pellucidar, and they have to figure out how to escape, because Pellucidar is kind of a wild land. It's like a lot of Lost Worlds. It's not particularly friendly and safe. So, yeah, I had a good excuse to read this and catch up on some other Edgar Rice Burroughs stories. So, this will be interesting. The second space is recommended. This has to be a book that was recommended to you. And I decided to choose the book Hell and Gone by Henry Brown. Somebody had recommended this to me a long time ago. I can't remember their name. Sorry, I see their face clear as day, but for some reason their name is escaping me. And Hell and Gone is part of a series called The Retreads. And the Retreads are apparently this special ops team made of either these like disgraced soldiers or servicemen who are kind of over the hill, and the army has no use for them anymore. And this is supposedly their first mission. They're sent to Africa because they're trying to swipe a nuclear device from this African nation that's going through a civil war. And they don't want the either side of the civil war to have that nuclear device because they're worried about what it would happen. So the whole premise of the story is them trying to get this nuke away from these two warring sides. I was interested in this because the premise, some of you who are video gamers might remember there used to be this video game series called Soldier of Fortune. And one of the Soldier of Fortune video games dealt with mercenaries who were hired to nab this nuclear device that a terrorist group had. So this kind of sounded similar, and I was like, oh, that might be fun to read. The third space is the middle space of the entire bingo card, and that one is a reader's choice. So any book I wanted. And I decided I wanted to read My Confession, Recollections of a Rogue by Samuel Chamberlain. And this is a nonfiction memoir by Samuel Chamberlain, and it's about his participation in the Mexican-American War and his time in a scalping gang that he joined after the war was over. So kind of a grim story concept. Supposedly, this book was one of the main inspirations for Cormac McCarthy's infamous book, Blood Meridian, which is considered one of the most brutal westerns ever written. And I was really curious to check this book out first because everything I've read about Blood Meridian kind of makes it sound edgy. Like there's some things that are described there. I go, that seems kind of unintentionally funny. Like apparently a person like literally kills puppies at one point. Like a lot of people say, yeah, it's brutal and disturbing, but it's also kind of funny given how insane the lengths of the villainous guy in Blood Meridian is. So I wanted to read this first, just to see if Blood Meridian matches the brutality of this, or if this one actually exceeds it, because sometimes truth is more disturbing than fiction. So I wanted to read this first, just to sort of see the historical context of where Blood Meridian came from, and just sort of look at, what happens when somebody gets involved in this kind of group. So this will be interesting. The second space says sci-fi/fantasy. Again, I have a wide selection of choices for that. But I decided I would do Slayer in the Wide Valley by Adam Misner. Misner is, I don't know if he's still with her. I know he hung out with the YouTuber Dan Fan a lot. I don't know if he still does, but that was what I last knew about him. This is a story about a man in sort of a fantasy world that fights orcs. But the big thing about it is that this is more of a fantasy more inspired by Germanic folklore and history rather than English folklore and history, like a lot of post Lord of the Rings stories have been. And I was interested in this because for that reason. I've mentioned before that my family has a lot of ties to Germany, and I was kind of interested in a fantasy that sort of leaned more into Germanic influence than explicitly English influence. So I'm real curious about this one. The fifth space is award winner. I have to do a book that has won awards. And this one was, again, a pretty easy choice. It is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Most of you are probably aware of this book because the movie version came out a few months ago. And the story of this is that an astronaut is sent on this desperate mission into outer space because something's going on that's destroying the Earth, and if it's not fixed soon, Earth is going to die off. But the setup for this is that whatever the process it's taken to get him there, the astronaut has lost his memory. And the other astronauts are kaput. They all died in the transit. And so he has to regain his memory while also trying to fix the problem. So that's the essential setup. And like I said, I'm reading this partially because of the recent release of the film. Also the fact I've had this for a few years now. This was something my local library gave out for free for one of their summer reading events. I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago. So this has been sitting for a while, and I looked it up. Yeah, it's won awards, so it qualifies for this space. We are now on row 4, and the first space for row 4 is reread. It has to be a story you've read before and you are rereading. And this was an easy choice for me because this is a book that I really like, but I haven't read it for over 5 years. And it is The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway. I don't think I need to describe who Ernest Hemingway is. He's one of the most famous 20th century writers, not just in America, but in the world. And this story deals with a bunch of American expatriates who are living in Paris right after World War I. It's the 1920s. And it's sort of describing their emotional struggles with each other while they're on a trip to go watch the running of the bulls in Spain. And go watch some Spanish bullfighting. This is one of my favorite books ever. This was like the first book where I went, oh, actually, you can have a story about, just these minor little things happening in life, and they can be very interesting. And this has been my favorite Hemingway book since college. I have not read all of his books, but of the ones I've read, this one is my favorite, so I was really looking forward to rereading this. The second space is audiobook. This this is a book where you have to listen to it by audio, as an audiobook. And I decided to pick a bit of an odd choice, Wolfpack by Robert N. Charette. I have the physical copy here, but I am going to be listening to the audiobook version of it. And Wolfpack is part of the BattleTech universe. For those that don't know, there's this series of a tabletop game called BattleTech that deals with giant robots fighting each other and among different planets as mankind has spread to the stars. And this book deals with one of the mercenary groups of these BattleTech mechs. And they're called the Wolf's Dragoons. And they're this infamous mercenary group that fights and is one of the best fighters of all time and has virtually lost none of the conflicts they've been involved with. But this story deals with a situation where within their own ranks there's a civil war. And the story is about how they deal with that civil war amongst their own and how they end that conflict. The YouTuber Razorfist made an audiobook of this, I think a year and a half ago. Actually, I think it was more like 2 or 3 years ago now that I think about it. And I really wanted to listen to that, but I have a weird quirk where I can't stand audiobooks because I read very quickly. It was a skill I learned in middle and high school, how to read pretty quick while also comprehending the words that I'm reading. And because of that, audiobooks to me are very frustrating to read and listen to because they are much slower than I'm used to reading. So it kind of irks on me, and I don't like doing that, which is why I often like buying the physical books and reading along if I have to listen to an audiobook, because it's easier for me to absorb the information. So I will be reading this while listening to Razorfist's audiobook version. So it will be an audiobook reading, but there will be some physical reading with it too. So that's the plan. The third space is debut. This has to be a book that's the debut of an author. And this is one that I decided to do based on a recommendation the UCF alumni group sent me. And it's going to be a romantasy book titled Reign of the Glittering Flames by Elizabeth Starling. Is that right? Yes, Starling. Elizabeth Starling. And this is a romantasy about this woman who was born with devil-like features, because in this fantasy world, you can be cursed by the devils to look like a devil. And the whole theme of it is that she's under a curse to look like a devil because her mother made a deal with one of the devils. And the whole premise of this book, she's trying to break the curse, but she starts falling in love with a devil herself. And so this book is kind of examining that push-pull between wanting to get rid of this curse while also maybe wanting to keep it for power reasons, or romantic reasons too. So I don't know much about romantasy. I've known several people who really don't like romantasy, but I'm gonna try it out just to see how I feel about it. And I learned from the UCF alumni that this was Starling's debut novel. So I figured, well, I can support a writer. I'm trying to get my first full-length book out this year, so I figured I would support her in this, even if the book doesn't do anything for me. So this is at least one sale she can count on. So, yeah. The fourth space is knight or local author. A knight author basically meaning someone else who graduated from UCF, or a local author meaning someone local from your area. I decided I was going to pick someone local from my childhood home. I grew up in the Daytona Beach area, so I picked a Daytona Beach author, Audrey Parente, and this is her book, Pulp Noir. This is a story that deals with two book hoarders who collect pulps, but they start falling in love with each other, but they have to learn to open up to each other. And this is the story of that strange romance. And Audrey Parente was actually a very big figure here in Daytona Beach for several years because she worked at the big newspaper Daytona Beach News Journal. And she was involved in a lot of things with that. And but like a lot of newspapers, the News Journal was starting to downsize, and she left, and she actually joined the group here, this publishing group, Bold Venture Press, who famously is run by Rich Harvey, but Audrey Parente joined the Bold Venture Press group, and she's been working for that publishing group for several years now. So, and I've actually met Audrey Parente twice. Once was a couple of years ago. Once was a very brief meeting at Pulp Fest last year, because she was up for an award there, and I only saw her briefly. I think I just said hi, briefly. I didn't talk much, but I have met her a couple times, and yeah, so I wanted to check out this book because I actually found this in a Daytona Beach bookstore. So that was, so I think that's a good sign that, okay, this is a Daytona Beach author sold from a Daytona Beach bookstore. The stars are aligning for this one. So the fifth space is black or gold cover. Black and gold is the UCF colors. You can see it on the hat. The insignia is gold. The rest of it's black. So a black or gold cover. And I looked through my collection, and I had this one with a black cover. Son of the Black Sword by Larry Correia. And this is a story, a typical sort of fantasy story, it sounds like, where this fantasy warrior gets chosen by an ancient sword to wield it and become this mighty warrior. But he soon learns that the history of his world is not entirely true. Certain things that were held back, and the powers that be are fibbing about. And he turns against his own masters to fight for what he has to fight for. A typical fantasy setup. I've heard about Larry Correia before. I think he does a series called like the Monster Hunter or something. What's it called? It's back here. The well, it's not listed here, but I think he does a series called Monster Hunter or something. This book's been on my to be read for a while, so I figured, do this one. Plus, it's a black cover. It fits for this space, so. Alright, so row 5. This is the last one, guys. Don't worry, I won't take up too much more time. This space is Reader's Choice. I can choose whichever one I want. And I decided to choose The Light Ages by Seb Falk. And this is a story that's a nonfiction narrative that's attempting to fight against the notion a lot of people have today that, you know, the medieval times were like the Dark Ages. Like, everybody was living in muck, superstition ruled the land. This book tries to push against that, and it's arguing that there was actually a lot of scientific progress made during the medieval times. And apparently it focuses on a English abbot by the name of John Westwick, and sort of examining his discoveries as well as the other discoveries of his contemporaries. I've always been kind of annoyed by a lot of people who say, oh, we would have had flying cars by now if the medieval ages hadn't happened. And it's kind of like, everything I've read says, no, it was actually kind of the opposite. There were a lot of contributions to science and culture during the medieval ages, so I really wanted to read a book that examined that idea. The second space is Page to Screen. You got to read a book that was adapted into a movie or television show. And this is one that I'll also be doing for June on the Range, because I realized, oh, this actually fits really well with June on the Range too. And it is Zane Grey's Riders of the Purple Sage. This is one of, if not the most famous Zane Grey story. And this one has been adapted multiple times for both film and television. I've looked it up. So this absolutely fits for this space, and it fits for June on the Range. And the story of Riders of the Purple Sage is that it deals with a man named Lassiter who comes to this small Utah town during the Wild West days to avenge the death of his sister. And his sister was killed at the hands of this corrupt Mormon preacher. And it seems like a simple revenge story, but soon a bunch of other complications start happening. So that's the essential setup for Riders of the Purple Sage. I've really wanted to read this story for a long time. I've heard about it for years, even before I was really into pulp fiction. So this was just a good excuse to read it, so that's what I'm going to do. The third space I have is historical fiction. Fiction that was written about a historical period before the time of the book's writing. And I figured I was going to do another Edgar Rice Burroughs book, which is The Outlaw of Torn. I don't have the copy with me right now, but I do have one in my storage unit. So I will read that when I have the opportunity. And the whole premise of The Outlaw of Torn is that it's this essentially this Robin Hood tale, like this dashing outlaw who's fighting the British in the 13th century. But it turns out he starts to fall in love with one of the people, this woman who's devoted to the king. And it turns out he may have a stronger connection to the British king than he expected. So I was interested in this one because this was one of the few historical pieces that Burroughs did. He was usually focused on more fantastical things like John Carter of Mars or the Tarzan series. Though I guess you could argue that John Carter of Mars thing is technically historical in a sense, because it does take place at times in the past. But The Outlaw of Torn is explicitly historical fiction. And based on my research, Burroughs actually did not do as many purely historical fiction pieces as you would think. But yeah, so this gave me an excuse to read him. And apparently it's a one-off story, so I don't have to read a bunch of other Burroughs stories to know what's happening in that. So that's very cool. The fourth space is library book. I have to get a book from the local library. I already know which one I'm going to get. It is The Moose That Roared by Keith Scott. And The Moose That Roared is the history of Jay Ward and Bill Scott, and examining how they created the famous animated shows Rocky and Bullwinkle and George of the Jungle. And I mostly wanted to read this because, one, I grew up watching a lot of Rocky and Bullwinkle when I was younger. My family had that huge collection of VCR tapes that had a lot of their episodes on them, so we watched that a lot growing up. And I also want to do it because I've checked that book out like 3 times now, and over the last 4 years, I have never been able to finish it. It's very detailed into explaining what was going on with Jay Ward and Bill Scott. So it's not an easy read to do in like 3 days. It's one it takes several days to read. So I finally want to finish that. To say, yes, I finished The Moose That Roared. So that'll be the library book. The final space is Reader's Choice. I can choose whichever one I want to do. And the one I want to do is William Walker's Wars, How One Man's Private American Army Tried to Conquer Mexico, Nicaragua, and Honduras, by Scott Martell. The title is a little misleading because he didn't try to take over Nicaragua. He did take over Nicaragua for a few years. So, but that's being pedantic. This is a story about, not a story, it's history. It's a history about William Walker, who was a filibuster. And what a filibuster was basically a private individual who tried to take over a foreign land using their own private resources, instead of, like, being a representative of another nation, or being a mercenary who was hired to do something. The filibusters were private individuals who tried to take over places for their own benefit. They were also known as freebooters, but William Walker is probably the most famous one because he invaded several Central American states and took over a few of them, like Nicaragua. He also tried to invade the Sonora region of Mexico and took over that. Not for very long, though. But yeah, he's a very interesting figure. I've always been fascinated by him and his role in history, because he's just such a strange figure in that sense. He was doing these invasions for private gain, but also kind of, he had this like weird belief that if he took over Central America, he might be able to avert the Civil War, because he would be able to have a slave states, and that would like balance out the Compromise of 1850 or something. He's very interesting in that regard. It was a very strange. He had strange and interesting reasons for his conquerings, but he's interesting, and I want to read about him. This is a book that's popped up a lot about William Walker, so this is a good excuse to read about him. So, sehr gut. All right, well, that's all of the books that I'm going to be trying to read this summer. I expect I won't get done with all of them. I will get a bingo before this contest is done for, though. That I'm fairly assured of. So that'll be my main goal, but reading the rest of these will be a secondary goal. I suspect it'll probably go well past August 9th, probably into September, if I'm being honest. But yeah, we'll see how many we can get done by August 9th. And by we, I mean me. So, thank you to anybody who was listening. I hope if you may have found some books that have caught your eye and you may want to check out. And if you haven't, then still thank you for listening to me go on for, oh, we just passed the hour mark. So thank you for sticking around that long. I guess I'll sign off with a Go Knights. All right. Bye.